Russia's most powerful weapon isn't a missile. It's not a tank. It's a cheap drone that costs $50,000 and forces Ukraine to fire a $4 million missile to stop it. That math was destroying Ukraine every single night. Hundreds of drones, bleeding the defense systems dry. That was Putin's plan. Exhaust Ukraine, drain the stockpiles, then strike. But something just happened, something that Moscow did not see coming. Japan just walked onto the battlefield, and they brought a $2,000 answer to Russia's $50,000 problem. Let me explain exactly what this means, and why Putin's entire spring offensive may have just collapsed before it even started. On March 31st, two men stood on the same stage in Kyiv. Tukik, the CEO of Japan's Terror Drone Corporation, and Maxim Klemenko, the CEO of Ukraine's Amazing Drones. They weren't there for politics. They weren't there for speeches. They had one goal: build an interceptor drone, right here, right now, inside Ukraine. And this wasn't just another defense deal. This was Japan's first ever direct investment in Ukraine's defense sector. That is a historic line being crossed. But here's where it gets interesting. The production facility they chose isn't in some safe, quiet industrial zone far from the war. It's in the Kharkiv region, one of the most targeted areas in the entire conflict, right in the crosshairs of Russian missiles. You have to ask yourself, why would they do that? Why build a defense factory in a war zone? We'll get to that. Because the answer reveals something brilliant about how Ukraine is fighting this war. First, let's talk about what they're actually building. The Terra A1 interceptor drone. This thing moves at 300 kilometers per hour. Russia's Shahed drones, the ones hitting Ukrainian cities every night, travel at around 185 kilometers per hour. So the Terra A1 doesn't just catch up to a Shahed, it runs it down. It has a range of 35 kilometers. It can stay airborne for 15 minutes. That's enough time to identify a target and destroy it in a single mission. And here's the part that makes it truly dangerous. It runs on an electric motor, almost completely silent, low heat signature. Radar systems struggle to detect it. It approaches like a ghost and hits before anyone knows it's there. But none of that is the real story. The real story is the price. Think about this carefully. One Russian Shahed drone costs roughly $50,000. Ukraine used to shoot those down with Patriot missiles. Each Patriot missile costs between $2 million and $4 million. That's not a defense strategy. That's financial suicide. Russia understood this perfectly. Launch enough cheap drones. Force Ukraine to fire expensive missiles. Watch the stockpiles disappear. Then send in the ground forces when the sky is undefended. That was the plan. And it was working. But now a Terra A1 interceptor costs $2,000. $2,000 to destroy a $50,000 drone. That is a 1 to 25 cost advantage. Overnight. Gone is the economic logic behind Russia's entire drone campaign. If you're finding this breakdown useful, hit like and subscribe. We cover these developments every single day. Reports suggest Russia launched over 6,000 kamikaze drones in March 2026 alone. If Ukraine responded to every single one with a Patriot missile, the cost would be catastrophic. Billions of dollars in just 1 month. With interceptor drones doing the heavy lifting, that same job costs a fraction of the price. And this is where things start to fall apart for Moscow. Putin's spring 2026 offensive was built on a very specific assumption: drain Ukraine's air defense, deplete the missile supply, then launch a massive coordinated ground push while the skies are open. Early signs indicate the Kremlin had been building toward this for months. The drone campaign wasn't random destruction. It was systematic, calculated, designed to create a window. But interceptor drones destroy that entire calculation. Because missile stockpiles aren't draining anymore. The cheap drones are handling the cheap threats. The expensive systems are being saved for the serious ones. And here's the brutal reality for Russia. The more Shaheds they launch, the worse it gets for them economically. Every new wave of drones just widens the cost gap further. Ukraine spends $2,000. Russia loses $50,000. Do that 1,000 times a night and the numbers become staggering. Russia has essentially been funding Ukraine's defense innovation without realizing it. But wait, we still haven't answered the question from earlier. Why build the factory in a frontline region? Here's what's really happening. Ukraine learned a brutal lesson early in this war. Large, centralized factories are sitting targets. Russian missiles find them within days. so they stopped building large, centralized factories. Instead, dispersed production. Dozens of small underground facilities, hidden, mobile, spread out. Tokig himself confirmed this directly. He stated that a traditional factory would become an immediate target. Keeping the production network secret and scattered dramatically reduces the risk. Right now, a single trained worker can assemble approximately 2 Terra A1 interceptors per day. The first production run is targeting 1,000 units, all going directly to Ukrainian armed forces. And Japan isn't just bringing technology, they're bringing capital. Ukrainian defense companies have been struggling to secure bank loans throughout this war. The risk is simply too high for conventional lenders. Japanese low-interest capital changes that equation entirely. This isn't just a drone deal. It's a financial lifeline wrapped inside a military partnership. But here's where the story expands far beyond Ukraine. A few months ago, President Zelensky gave an interview to Kyoto News and made Ukraine's position crystal clear. Ukraine was ready to share its battle-tested naval drone and interceptor drone technology with Japan. In exchange, they wanted air defense systems and ballistic missile defense technology. Think about what that means. Ukraine, a country fighting for its survival, has developed naval drone technology so advanced that Japan, one of the most sophisticated military nations in the world, wants it. Ukraine's Magura naval drones forced a significant portion of Russia's Black Sea fleet to retreat from coastal positions. Warships sunk or driven back by a country with no navy. That is unprecedented in modern warfare history. Japan is an island nation. It faces threats from China, North Korea, and Russia simultaneously. The idea of low-cost autonomous naval drones defending coastlines is not theoretical for Tokyo. It is an urgent strategic priority. Early signs indicate both governments are now preparing an intergovernmental agreement covering defense equipment and technology transfer. Japan is also reportedly considering purchasing Ukrainian attack drones for its own self-defense forces. One theory is that this is simply an economic arrangement. Japan gets battlefield-tested tech, Ukraine gets funding. Another possibility is that this is a deliberate geopolitical signal. Japan aligning with Ukraine sends a message to Beijing as much as it does to Moscow. But there's also a darker explanation. Japan may have assessed that the current global security order is fracturing, and is quietly repositioning itself before that fracture becomes a crisis. Reports indicate Japan's defense budget for fiscal year 2026 has hit a record high of nearly $58 billion. That number doesn't happen by accident. Behind it sits China's expanding military reach, North Korea's continuous missile tests, and Russia's growing presence in the Pacific. Japan is not simply helping Ukraine. Japan is preparing itself and using Ukraine's wartime laboratory to accelerate that preparation. The same interceptor drone technology stopping Shahed swarms over Kharkiv could theoretically be deployed in the Taiwan Strait. Around Japan's southern islands, across the South China Sea, Ukraine learned these lessons in blood. Japan is absorbing them strategically, and the United Kingdom is moving in parallel. British-made Rapid Ranger short-range air defense systems were spotted in active Ukrainian service for the first time on March 27, 2026. Mobile, laser-guided, resistant to electronic jamming, capable of engaging targets at low altitude where Shaheds operate. Ukraine's air defense is no longer a single shield. It is now a layered wall. Patriots at high altitude, IRIS-T in the middle, Rapid Rangers and interceptor drones covering the low-altitude corridor where Russia's drones live. Every altitude, covered, Putin's multi-vector strike doctrine assumes one of those layers will crack under pressure. But the math no longer supports that assumption. Here's what we actually know. A $2,000 drone is dismantling a strategy that Russia spent years designing. An Asian nation thousands of miles from this war has become a direct participant in reshaping its outcome. And the countries watching this most carefully aren't in Europe. They're in East Asia. The future of warfare is not being written in massive shipyards or billion-dollar weapons programs. It's being written in underground workshops in Kharkiv, in boardrooms in Tokyo, in battlefield data that no military academy has ever seen before. Russia can build more Shaheds. They can launch more swarms. But every wave they send just feeds the innovation machine working against them. And if this alliance continues to deepen, if autonomous interceptors become fully operational, if Japan's capital scales production, if the technology spreads to other theaters, then Putin isn't just facing a harder war in Ukraine. he may be facing a global defense ecosystem specifically engineered to counter everything Russia currently has. The consequences of that could be far bigger than anyone in Moscow is ready to admit.